Operator. I think I do not have to explain to the young participants here. They all know operator and that they are party of two. This is Anja Katharin and Deja Tai. Their names, you know, they are still complicated up till now, complicated for me because I always call them operator. I think that's a wonderful name for you. You are an award-winning experimental artist duo, and they were founded in 2016. Tai has a background as an immersive artist and a technologist specialized in human-computer interaction. And Catherine comes from choreography and performance art. You will see that, I guess. And it's so wonderful that they found the time to share the summit and give a presentation, and I'm so much looking forward to it. Welcome, Operator.
I'm Deja Tai.
And I'm Anja Katharin.
And we are Operator. So we have a collaborative practice, and we first met on Instagram, which for any of you who know anything about our practice, there's a lot of theme of surveillance capitalism, so people find this to be a bit ironic. But we first met on Instagram to work together.
Then we got married and worked together, and now we've been doing that for the last 8 years. And my background, as Susanna mentioned, is as a choreographer and performance artist. So before starting to collaborate with Deja, I had a practice mostly focused on working with the body as a medium, creating performances, films.
And mine is as a multimedia artist and an HCI technologist, very much thinking about bringing the technology to the background and thinking a lot about not interactive art, but calm art or calm technology. So together, our practice brings together immersive environments, technology, and performance art to create singular experiences. And there was conversation about this yesterday. I believe Joan was speaking about this. But we particularly don't have any allegiance to any one medium, right? So we think more about the allegiance to a concept, and we also have allegiance to our cat, Claude.
And the human body has been central to our practice and in different ways before Operators. So mine literally working with the body as a material, whereas Deja thinking about human and computer interaction. But the body has always been a central focus of everything that we've ever made.
So digital art.
How's it going?
So digital art gets a bad rap sometimes, and I know that we've been fighting this fight of protecting digital art, trying to convince others who might not see digital art as real art, and this has been a fight that we've been making for many, many years. But
not as long as most of the people in this room, I was just
about to say that, so you can identify.
We're picking up.
And so there's all this talk about, spectacle, and it makes sense because this is kind of the stuff that you hear in the mainstream headlines. Sale prices the most, generative AI, of course. Useless tech adopted, always present. Is there spectacle? Always. Selfies generated, billions and billions. What else?
So we made this because we have a section of a larger talk on dashboards, and we're kind of thinking about what kind of information filters out of our digital art or the art and technology bubble that we all are very familiar with. So what kind of stories, what is the mainstream here about what's happening with art? What is the mainstream here about what artists might be doing with technology? And it's a very narrow view that they often get based on, measures like this. We're at the point where it's kind of feeling like you just need the biggest screen available, and then it's the best digital art in the world, which obviously we have an issue with. It's an actual quote from Marcel Duchamp. Just kidding.
It's a deep fake. An audio deep fake.
We
BSA.
could make that, actually. Yeah. Audio deep fake of him saying that. Anyway, so being dissatisfied with kind of the reputation of digital art, also where we saw it was going, feeling like we're fighting the good fight to actually elevate and make work that can be seen as art, not just stuff that's falling into what we believe is falling flat. We created the operator rules for art and technology. Do you want to explain why they're in quotes?
Well, because we don't say art in clay or art in paint or art in fill in the blank. And this type of separatism between art and technology is to put the emphasis where it should not be, which is on the technology. And we created the rules for art and technology in 2019. And we really felt that, we had an issue where the tech world was eye-rolling the art world, and the art world was eye-rolling. We have a timer within a timer because we want to time our section.
That went off at the wrong time. It's actually part of the
No, I think
presentation.
we're just a minute and a half late.
Shit.
So the tech world is eye-rolling the art world, and the art world is eye-rolling the tech world. And both parties are saying, is that all there is?
Is that all there is?
This is how everyone is feeling.
If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing.
So to stop that feeling, shared sentiment, we created the operator rules for art and technology, a rule set for avoiding the tricks and gimmicks of art that happens to be using technology. We'll go through these very fast. Number 1, no tech demos. Number 2, visible technology does not equal high tech. Number 3, don't rely on scale.
Just because it's big doesn't mean it's good, but it can be big and still be good. So
True.
yeah, we create immersive art, usually large productions. So this one is incredibly important for us to keep in mind. Next is asking, when the tech is no longer novel, will the work still hold up? We have the Namjoon Pike exhibition here to show that even though these TVs are old and probably you can't even make them work anymore, still the artwork is the artwork and the concept is holding up, not because the merit of the technology. And last is no to spectacle, a la Yvonne Rainer, a choreographer. And this is really looking at moving away from art and technology as spectacle, as entertainment. We can do better. And we feel that the use of technology should not just be used technically, but also conceptually, because tech doesn't age well and concepts do. So, with that, let's discuss embodied generative art.
So the artwork that we're speaking about today is Human Unreadable, which is part of the larger privacy collection. And the privacy collection history is here. So there are multiple lots. It's an ongoing series looking specifically at the tension between privacy and transparency inherent in blockchain technology. So we've been working around the subject of privacy since 2019, but mostly in a Web 2 context. But then looking at privacy in Web 3 is a different animal. So we're asking the question, how does privacy function in a Web 3 context? What are the particular nuances of that? Identity, hiding, sharing, expressing, etc. We decided to make a work that was site-specific to on-chain long-form generative art, which is a very specific site, I think technically and culturally.
And what we noticed in contemporary generative art is that there was a lack of the human body that we saw. And so we thought, if we're going to create a long-form generative artwork, how are we going to bring the body, which is an essential aspect to our practice, to on-chain, an on-chain work? And it was interesting to us that this was missing, because I studied multimedia arts, and I got my education about performance and performance art through EAT, through, I can't think of digital art, separate from performance art. And so I think that was interesting to us, but also you pointed this out, the definition of generative, the first example.
Yeah, so there seems to be this feeling that the body is kind of incompatible with digital art. Not that everyone feels, obviously some people don't, but then even a simple Google search of the word generative, what it means, and I love that the sample sentence is the female reproductive system and its generative cycles is the sample sentence. So this idea of the fundamental incompatibility of something like the body with a generative system or the body with digital art was very interesting, and we saw as kind of a challenge to merge those two. And this is not new, as we heard from Grant David Taylor yesterday, which was very exciting. This piece that he wrote about early women in digital art who were fighting for a more embodied, sensual approach to making art with computers and trying to challenge the dominant aesthetics, the dominant approaches of what that could be, what that could look like. That was very much something that we saw kind of echoing still now in our time. So we wanted to continue the work of those early artists, so people like Rebecca Allen, and Olivia Cordiero, Jean Beeman, so many others, to bring that to the current context of generative art today. So continuing that, moving away from this and modernist design and kind of the established expected aesthetics of the medium, moving towards,
well, away. You got to the punchline before the slide. Away from modernist design and towards physicality, sensuality, chaos. And we always say that there's only so much that you can express in the Swiss grid. So here we are with embodied generative art. Now, I think it's important to introduce the project Human Unreadable, which was our journey into embodied digital art, embodied generative art. And Human Unreadable took place, it takes place in 3 acts, but the theme and the conceptual art of the work is the human body hiding in plain sight, and that it is a slow recovery of the human in 3 acts. So we hide the human and then we recover it over the course of 3 acts.
the overview. Act 1 was the reveal on Art Blocks, which is in May 2023. Act 2 was the uncovering of the hidden choreography that created each piece, which is November of last year. And Act 3, which we are still placing, is a final performance where the first 100 mints from the collection are going to be used as the raw material to stage an evening-length performance where people are watching and experiencing generative art, human to human, in the flesh, rather than through a screen.
So in Act 1, the human is not yet visible, and in Act 2, you're able to connect your wallets. If you are the owner of a Human Unreadable, then you can reveal an underlying choreography, the underlying token, which exposes the choreographic sequence that drove the final visual output. And here you can see there is a pair of visual outputs from Art Blocks, minted on Art Blocks, excuse me, and then the choreographic score. So there's 400 pieces in the collection. That means there's 400 underlying choreographic scores. So the day that you went to mint a Human Unreadable, you were not only minting the output, but you were first minting the underlying choreographic score. That means that is the sequence itself. So it was all stored on chain. So in that way, you're collecting the choreography as well. Act 3, as Anya said, is the live performance where you take the human fully out of the screen, the human as in the audience participant, and you're watching generative art in full flesh. Now, how did we make this?
So we had this vision where we were going to bring generative choreography to Art Blocks and bring the human body on chain meaningfully. And
in the bear market.
In the bear market. And this ended up being very true. So we were, I think, a little bit delusional about how many hurdles there were going to be to making that. But it ultimately did turn into a version of manifestation because we figured it out. It just took a lot more than we expected. So it was 9 months in the making. We're going to get into a bit of the process of how this actually came to be.
So in the team of Human Unreadable, there were about 6 engineers, Anya and I think about 25 dancers all around the world who participated in the creation of this project. And Isaac Patka, who's the lead engineer of Human Unreadable, before the release of Human Unreadable, in an interview with Eric Keldron, actually, he goes, it's interesting, because he's an engineer. He doesn't make art generally. This was the first artwork he had ever participated in. And he said, in engineering, when it works, the job is done. He said, but in art, I'm realizing when it works, the job is just beginning. And because we had to like kind of encourage the team to, 9 months in, still want to finish the project and not abandon us. But anyway, so what we see here is the generative choreography method that we created. So there was no, existing tool set or system to create this generative choreography, and so we had to make it ourselves. And yesterday we were hearing many artists speaking about making the tools because they just simply did not exist. This is what we spent 9 months doing. So it goes like this. The first step of the process is building a conceptual movement framework. Then from there, Anya created, a bunch of stick figures, designing the individual moves, and then she thought, okay, let me perform these moves in random sequences. So we worked with dancers, and we would, create analog algorithms, and they tried out the moves, and often the moves, looked really bad in random order and sequences. So we would test and revise, test and revise, test and revise until Anya was happy with how the moves looked in any sequence whatsoever. Then from there, when we were happy with the moves, we put Anya in a motion capture suit, in a mocap suit, and then we had to take that high resolution data and turn it into an FBX. But it was way too much data. So if we uploaded this to the Ethereum blockchain, just the raw data that you would rig to an avatar in a video game, for instance, it would have cost us $200,000. So not only did we not have $200,000, but we thought, this would be not a really good use of the blockchain. And you can see here, we found that the human body is so much more sophisticated, it seems, than the most advanced technologies. This is 3 seconds of movements in a CSV file.
And what's incredible is all of this data to show 3 seconds of human movement, and there's so much that is missing from this. There's so much information that simply cannot be translated, no matter how many columns and rows you have of information, because of how sophisticated the body is as a kind of messaging system and conveyor of information.
So Isaac put us on bone budgets, and it was so interesting because Anya started choreographing in spreadsheets.
That's why I was a dancer, because I never wanted to deal with spreadsheets. But then I found myself here because we couldn't afford to upload every single bone of the entire body for each move. So I had to do each move multiple times and say, do I need my thigh for this move? Do I need my wrist for this move, or can the movement be expressed and conveyed on chain if I don't have my ankle bone? And so I had to decide which were the minimum bones needed to express that movement. And then I had to write why and no in a spreadsheet of bones. But I felt super cool after I did that, I have to say.
If I told you to choreograph in spreadsheets, you would say no, but Isaac told you and you did it.
Yeah, well, we're not married.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Okay.
Okay, anyway, so we created a tool in Touch Designer where we're able to scrub through the avatar, and we could see on the right-hand side the CSV file, the spreadsheet of numbers that correlated with that exact frame. So we can ensure that the frames that we were extracting were certainly the frames of the move. Then Anya went through the bone budgeting process with the yes and no's, deciding on which bones to keep and which ones to remove. Then from there, we created a motion ABI because we wanted to encrypt all of the motion data on chain.
It's the privacy collection.
Privacy collection, so we have to encrypt and hide everything. So the motion ABI was the second to last step, and then all of that was put into a JSON file and uploaded in our script on the Ethereum blockchain. So 5 months later, we began to work on the part of the process where people might start thinking about in the beginning, which is, what does this look like? So the entire engineering team was like, okay, we've been working for 5 months. I thought we were making visual art, but I haven't seen anything visual whatsoever. So we got through this process, and we started to ask the question, what will it look like? So we did a photo shoot, and what we did is we created a silhouette of Anya's body parts. Snooze, 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 snooze. And then we vectorized the body parts. We turned them into SVGs, and then we had to, there's in art blocks, you can only have one library dependency, so we couldn't use the SVG dependency. So what we did is we turned that into Bezier curves, parsing it with Python, and then we had a text edit file, basically, that looked like that, but very, very long. And so then the kind of last part of the process was thinking through, okay, how are we going to tie together, both the Act 1 and the Act 2? And so what we did, and I explained this earlier, is we had the token hash, right, at the moment of the mint. The token hash then went through the deterministic random function, which based on that went through our choreographic algorithm to create a choreo hash. That means there's a unique underlying sequence behind every visual output. And so that determines both the length, the sequence, the order of the moves, the pauses, the tempos, the performer orientation. And then from there, all of the underlying choreographic information is then mapped into our P5JS project. So the glass shaders, the different motion paths, and the different body parts. Here you can see kind of all of the elements composited on top of each other, but these were all influenced by the underlying dance. Here, for instance, you can see the motion path was drawn by the signature bone.
For each movement, we decided to have the way that the artworks were created using the movement. So some people think if you see like this silhouette, that means that silhouette is in the artwork. That's not really how it works. It's more, it's a little less one-to-one than that. The only actual like visualization of movement that you can see in these artworks is the motion path, which are these kind of scribbly looking lines. So for each movement, I chose which bone in the body had the most interesting journey. And so within each sequence, it chooses one of the movements in the sequence, and it chooses a signature bone, and it draws it on the output. So this one, for example, is the wrist. So within that movement, that's the path of the wrist. So when you see those lines on the outputs, it's the signature bone.
And then lastly, for the choreographic score, we created a solidity twin of our P5 project. And what we were able to do was to create using SVGs, which we stored on chain. So even there's no IPFS used for the choreographic scores. And what we did is we used something called the owner of function, which allows for the art blocks, the Act 1 token and the Act 2 token, to be bound together forever. These can never be separated or transferred separately or sold separately. Here you can see an underlying choreographic scores. So this is the overview of the method that we created, and that is all in the service of creating, an output like this. And like I said, there's 400 of them. But then, when people see this, image, they're just like, okay, so you made a collage.
We're like, not quite. It's a little bit different. But there was something Susanna said on the first day about Herbert Franke wanting to bring people into the beauty of mathematics through images. And that resonated with us because I think a lot of people see the images, and our intention is, the images are artworks themselves, they're complete artworks themselves. But we found that a lot of people, maybe just being attracted to the outputs, have suddenly found themselves interested in performance, interested in choreography, trying out their movement scores. So I also think there is a nice parallel there, because a lot more people have now taken a great interest in the history of generative choreography and performance in general, and its link to the history of digital art, which is obviously profound and very rich.
Yeah, that also connected with me, what Susanna said, because if a beautiful image can bring you into mathematics, maybe a beautiful image could bring you into the field of performance art. And so when people rocked up to art blocks that day, maybe some of them knew that they were collecting choreography, but we tweeted this right before the sale. By the end of the day, hundreds of people will have collected choreography, and the actual choreography, not documentation of choreography. So for us, this was, a really foundational part of the project. I think to kind of bring this, to like, I think like a culminating part of the presentation, we can speak a bit about the human unreadable exhibitions, because we feel that embracing technology doesn't mean that you have to neglect the body. While it is, maybe more difficult, and we drove ourselves crazy doing that, we find that it is feasible, and that the way that people can learn about technology and connect with technology in a different way is to learn about it in a physical way. So this is actually a presentation we did, an exhibition at HEC in Basel. Sabine
Hi, Sabine.
Hello.
And what we did here was we tried to take a lot of the processes that are happening on chain and kind of, invisibly, and bring them into tangible, physical, and interactive touch points, whether that's a generative choreography card deck with dice where people can roll and then make sequences using dice and then find, the unique choreographic score on a scroll that's unfolding to see a dancer. So in each city where we're exhibiting this, I'm working with a local dancer. I'm training the dancer in all 31 movements from the library, and then the dancer performs and kind of becomes the human randomness function and is improvising live using all of the movements from the library. And so then people are watching generative art, but they're seeing it through the body. And I think it helps people really understand what's going on kind of behind the scenes when it's pulled into these physical touch points, and they're not seen as, the opposite. Like, working with technology is not the opposite of working from the body. It's not moving away from the body, to be embracing it. And actually, in a lot of ways, we found that people are maybe interested in crypto art or generative art, or kids, go to see a crypto art thing and then they end up dancing. So I love this example.
This is in front of Lenny's piece, right?
Yeah, this is in front
That's
of Leander Herzog's piece. But what's funny is, this child was dancing in front of ours because it says try the movement, and they were doing all the dance moves, and then throughout the rest of his visit to HEC was dancing in front of all of the pieces.
You just dance in front of, you go to museums and dance in front of the art.
we were so happy about this because we were like, great, this child thinks that going to a digital art museum means dancing and moving around, And so in that way, and now we have, collectors. Here's Jason Bailey doing his choreographic score in the backyard, sending us videos. So this
such
idea,
a star.
Such a star. So the idea that technology always necessarily has to be pulling you away from the body, we think is false. And in this way, a lot of people actually have been brought into their bodies to explore movement, to try things that they never would have tried through maybe perhaps just being interested in generative art, maybe just being interested in crypto, maybe just wanting to flip on art blocks. All of that is amazing. But, people are dancing and kids are thinking that digital art museums are for moving around, which I think is a win.
And Anya gives Human Unreadable Movement Library dance classes
at
all of our exhibitions. So it's wonderful to see people move their bodies. I think we end by saying there are no firsts. This was shared with me by Roger Molina. Anya and I actually, in the beginning, I think the first month when we started working on Human Unreadable, so this is 2022, we were staying at Roger's house, and we were in the office of Frank Molina, which is a really heavy place to be if you're working on generative art.
Cool heavy.
Cool heavy. And he told us that his dad had a rule for Leonardo, which is never say, the first. And this is someone who, was like part of NASA, right? And so he had some first, and I think it's important for us to say, if Frank can't say there aren't any first, then neither can we. And I think this is an important aspect for us to bring up in the context of the last day here, where it was so important to see the people who have educated us speak and be in the same space. And I feel that, we want to continue to bring digital art into a place where, it's not just a niche thing that people, kind of are saying, hey, this is spectacle, or this is, not really art, because it's something that all of you have been fighting for, and so we have to also say thank you to you for that.
And so many of our heroes and influences for this project are actually here. Joan Truckenbrod, for example, and many others. So we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and thank you all. And dance more.
Thanks a lot for a wonderful presentation.